Hey guys, what's up? I just got done interviewing Haley. This interview is going to be awesome. It's right after this intro. I just want to give another shout out to Haley. Fantastic interview. Was such a fun time, such a cool guest. Hope you enjoy the interview. If you guys want to be on the show, you can email me at Derek O'Shea Show or contact me on DerekO'SheaShow@gmail.com or contact me on any social media platform. Be on the show. We'll have a conversation. Again, it's not about me, the show. I just want to hear from you what's going on in your head, what's going on in politics, and how you feel about your job, etc., family, your state you're in, the politics of the state. I want to know what's going on in your neck of the woods. You can email me or contact me on any social media platform. You could be on the show. So give it up to Haley for having the cojones to be the first person just to come on and say, hey, I'll take you up on that offer. So this is a great interview. I hope you guys enjoy it, because she's definitely going to come back on the show again, because it was such a good conversation. Have a great day and watch this interview and let me know your thoughts. Enjoy. How's it going? I want to hear your thoughts on the whole revolver story, I think.
Dude, okay. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not like super big conspiracy theory person. But there was some stuff in there that I'm like, I couldn't really argue it, you know? I kind of started thinking about it and I was like, okay, well, the FBI would want you to not think that anything like that would be possible, right? It's like all in movies and stuff. It's not like real. But then they go and they say, okay, but just a little while ago, they did this and this is what happened. So it's not weird to suspect. And they're not like suspecting it really. They're just saying like, hey, ask these questions.
Right. It's very weird. But it's kind of like, you know, that the FBI has always been a part of things in the past. So it wouldn't be out of the norm for them.
Yeah, that's what I feel too. I feel like it's valid enough that, and senators are too, starting to ask those questions. So it makes sense why they would, why people aren't getting indicted, and it's just kind of weird.
That's very weird. I wondered that too, for like, as much as like the Black Lives Matter and Antifa Summer of Love, I wondered if there was any FBI a part of that too, just to ramp it up. Because I always wondered who some of these, not saying that Antifa are these stand-up citizens, they're terrible human beings, but like, I wondered if FBI played a part in it just to continue the rage, continue the ramp up, just to make it seem like Trump's America is like chaos all the time.
Yeah. Well, if you read that article, they referenced that like most of the informants were in the leadership. So it's like, okay, how many, if there was say 3 leaders of the Proud Boys or 3 leaders of the 3 percenters, right? And one of those, even 1/3 of those is an informant. How much of the original idea was the informant? You know, it's kind of hard to trace back how much of the original idea or the things that they do are really their ideas if, you know, 1/3 or 25% or 30% of their leadership is FBI informant. That's kind of hard to like grapple with, I think.
And I think it just plays on to like either the mental health of some of the people that were there, but also just like how easily they were manipulated by some of these people. And I don't know. How easy
a mob can be manipulated.
Yes.
And egged on and stuff.
Especially when you're very angry about an outcome, which makes total sense. I don't know. That was such a eye-opening thing when I was on. I don't know if you saw it live. I was watching Tucker and I saw it live, and I was like, oh shit. Like if this is real, and like it, I mean, and it's hard to deny. It's like neither confirm or deny. So.
And 2, like they're not releasing a whole lot of footage, and there's just a lot of things that I would think that if they were like, if it was truly the narrative that they're spewing, if it was really that way, then they could release all this stuff, and I think they would too. I think they would take people to court and have it all, and just blast it on the media, blast it everywhere. But the fact that they're not releasing who shot Ashley Babbitt, who, you know, all of the footage, it's just kind of suspicious, and it's weird to gaslight somebody and be like, you're crazy because you think this is so suspicious. It's like, no, it is. Like it is weird. And it's that's a valid point to feel that it's weird, and that not everything is being told. So
yeah, so do you feel like that it would be better off if they did a commission to investigate it? Because I'm starting to like be like, well, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe if that would open the door to a lot of this. Would it be
I
worse?
think that if we had a split House and Senate and it was a commission across the two, and it wasn't, and the Democrats didn't control the House and the Senate, then I think it would be a better fair shot. But I know that the original concern about a commission was that it was going to be ran mostly by Democrats, who then appointed who was going to look into what and could very much control the process. But there has already been several committees that have done their own investigation, and they basically came up with a lot of these questions that we're having now. And the reason why a lot of people that were originally arrested out of like the 500 and something, if you look at their charges, a lot of them are like trespassing and stuff, and they haven't gone to court yet. But when they go to court and they have a video of people like, here you go, like, we're, like, come on in, like, whatever.
Right.
I don't know how that's going to play out. I know the courts are looking to like make an example, but
yeah, it's all very. I mean, I've had trespassing when I used to skateboard, so just the fact that people are in like freaking prison and they're just being held without trial, and it's just it's just the weirdest. And it's funny to see Putin come out and say the things like,
at the G7.
What? Yeah, what? I put people in prison too for that come against me, just like Joe Biden. And
they interviewed him and they were like, why do you kill people? And he was like, I don't know. Like, why did you kill people on January 6th? Who shot Ashley Babbitt? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, yeah.
And a fair question. I mean, it's like,
yeah, I mean, fair. Yeah.
I've said a million times that like, the Russia and China doesn't need to do propaganda because our media does it for them. And it just, any way to make us look like idiots and terrible, they just quote whatever CNN and MSNBC says.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, right now you go to their webpage, they'll be, the top story will be something about January 6th, in some capacity. Like today was like some GOP senator didn't shake a Capitol policeman's hand, and that was a top story.
And they're running out of stuff to talk about, because if they can't report on Joe Biden, and they can't report it in a positive light because it's so erroneous, like nobody would watch it, and they don't want to report it in a negative light, and they can't report about Trump anymore because they've literally done that to the nth degree. It's like, what else do you report on? And now it's just stupid stuff, because most of the stuff that's happening that's like worthy of reporting on has an angle that they don't like. So the only thing they can do is just not really report on it. And that's what we're seeing. And then you go to the Republican or the conservative stations, right? And it's kind of like blown out of proportion when most people are like in the middle. And either way, it's not going away. And that's kind of why I started posting stuff on my Instagram. Didn't really start that way, but I was like, well, I have a lot of friends that are liberal that are in the middle, and I have a lot of good friends that I'm able to talk to, but I felt like there was a lot of information out there that I know wasn't being reported on the media. And if you're not friends with somebody who's posting it and you're like, hey, like, just FYI, this is going on, and you kind of complained about this, but here it is by this other person, then how are you ever going to get exposed to any of that stuff? And kind of realize that you're kind of gaslighted for the last, since 2016.
Oh my gosh. Seriously. And I feel like it's gone past the point where they don't even want to admit that. And they're just like, it's become a religion to the point where they're just like, I'm not even going to like deal with my past statements or past tweets.
No. No.
I'm curious about, so you said most people are somewhere in the middle. Where do you kind of fit in? I know we just kind of got into this is Haley. She's one of the people, she reached out to me. She has the cojones to come on the show and talk to me. Because most people, honestly, I give respect to you, because most people are scared to talk about politics because they're afraid to be canceled, or somebody's going to research your name and finally find out where you work, and then you're done for the rest of your life. And you should just cower and stay in a closet and hide for the rest of your life. So I give you props.
Derek, that's why you got to invest in Bitcoin, right? So that ever happens.
Yes, I know. I just put more in.
Trend, but
Yes, I just put more in. Was it yesterday or the day before? I
Yeah.
As soon as especially when I heard Elizabeth Warren hates it and had that video
All in.
about, I was like, oh, of course they do. Freaking establishment. Of course they want all the control and they just want to mess with inflation, and the Federal Reserve is the biggest crime in the history of man that no one talks about, and I didn't learn about in school. But yeah. So where do you align politically? Where do you feel like you fit in?
I would say I was more center right in college. I've always been to the right.
Okay.
More center right in college. Lately, I think when I say lately, maybe like in the last 5 years, I've done a lot of research in the political realm about like topics and things like that, stuff that's going on, and the things that conservatives believe that are like, the nuclear family, stuff like that,
Yeah.
abortion, all of that stuff, kind of like listening to death penalty, like those really hard topics, like actually reading and listening to the different sides of the argument. And I think that's made me more, personally, my opinion, further right, but more, I don't really care what you do, and very pro like states' rights, because totally think that if a group of people want to set up a government and live in under certain circumstances in one state, and then other people want to do it in another, like that's why we were created the way, the US was structured the way that it was. And doing everything federally, you're just not gonna come to some conclusion that meets everybody's desired way to live. So I've just become more like secure in my own position, I think, and I know my arguments and things like that around some hard topics, but am not interested in the pressurizing of other people to do, you do you. But as it's starting to flip, right? We're starting to see different stuff in our jobs and on social media and stuff, making it no longer okay for you not to agree with that. You now must agree with it. And not only must you agree with it, you must be okay to march in a pride parade, or you must be okay to teach, not only go to like a critical race theory kind of diversity inclusion initiative at your job, but be a part of it and teach it, and you must be involved in the conversation. And it's kind of like, whoa, I wasn't stampeding on the way you want to live, so like don't do that to me, right? I'm not being ugly to you, I'm not being mean, I'm not being rude. So we should be fine. Like I thought it was all about coexisting and living respectfully with each other, and it doesn't seem to be that way anymore. So I think that's just made me more vocal, and like you said, more willing to like come on shows like this and talk to people and voice my opinion more and more over the last several years.
That's really admirable. That's really awesome that you feel like necessary to even do that, especially because critical race theory is such a huge topic. I don't know. Did you take any multiculturalism classes in your college degree?
No. So my background is in business and accounting. So very like national based. So when I went to school, and I have a bachelor's, so when I went to school, I didn't really come across what everybody's coming across today.
Okay.
I think that when I went to school, it wasn't as saturated with that. And then especially once I got into the business school, I was around a lot of people that just were very science-based. We did have a law class and we talked about some stuff, but it wasn't swayed any one way. But I have younger siblings, and I am hearing from them that the culture and atmosphere is definitely shifting a lot. It's hard to find a professor that you can't tell what their political belief is, and they're teaching math or science or something like that. So I can't speak from that perspective, from cultural experience, but I can see it in my work for sure, and in my husband's work for sure. We both work for pretty big companies, so we definitely see it in those areas for sure.
How do you see it in your because you're on the business side? So I've worked in education, and I'm finishing up a master's degree, which maybe one day I'll tell all about what I'm going to do, because it's definitely a counsellable kind of job. But and it's very liberal, and I'm a minority, being a conservative thought mind in my profession. But what in the business realm, how have you seen it just kind of infiltrate just normal day-to-day activities in our or office meetings and stuff like that in your experience?
So like, I'll give you one example. We all try, like everybody's trying to be, PC, politically correct, and get into this Zoom call. And I worked for this company for 3 or 4 months by this time. We get into this Zoom call, and this guy, he has a shirt on, and this is before the election, and it has Trump's, like face with like a swoop on it, and it says "Nope." I don't know if anybody's ever seen that, where his like hair is the O or something, but it says "Nope." And so he wore that to a meeting, and we're working from home. And so everybody not mentioning anything, there's a lot of people on there that were like, oh, whatever side you're on, that's funny, and I'm saying, yeah, I'm not offended by it, but if I wore a Biden Harris shirt, you would not say the same thing. You would not say the same thing. If I had a Trump flag behind me and I joined a WebEx, right? So there's just like that boldness from the other side that you don't see at all. And then we've had, of course, the vaccine pushes, not anything mandatory, but just very like, get it, share your story, get it.
Yes.
And also we launched an inclusion and diversity initiative at our work. HR did, and they invited a lot of people to come to like an open forum. So it was kind of interesting. They would pose a question, and people could come and go out of the meeting as they please. So at any time, there was like, I don't know, 100 something people in there, and you could type your response, and then people saw different people's responses, and then they upvoted and downvoted it. So in real time, you got to see out of the people in the meeting, the responses and how people reacted to people's different responses. And although it was interesting, because although the culture of the company was very like accepting of this, the responses were not. A lot of this responses, and not in a negative way, but a lot of responses were like, if you really cared about this, you would be doing this already. The only reason we're doing it now is because of political reasons. And a lot of people felt that way. A lot of the comments like that were upvoted and things like that. So, and we're, that's like just a main focus of our company right now is inclusion and diversity training. They're about to do it across corporate. So, that feeling that like, it's great. And I'm interested to see what that training says or does.
You're open-minded.
And I'm open to it, right? Because if the training says, hey, the population of minorities is this in the places that we work, and we're below that, and we just like to get at par with the population breakdown, cool, like whatever. But if it's leaning to the critical race theory stuff, putting everybody in buckets, and kind of, join this group and identify with these people, and that's not okay. So I'll be interested to see what it is. But the sentiment too for me was very much like, if you really cared about this, you would have been doing it before end of 2019, beginning of 2020, right? Like most companies already had that focus before in somewhat, and you're just starting it now. Because of political pressure. And that's all it is. And we know that's all it is. Like,
it's just it's very tokenism.
Yeah. So
just like, I mean, even if I was a black dude going into a company and there was just a bunch of white people, and I just felt like I got the job because I was black, I feel like I wouldn't be very happy there. I'd feel like everyone was looking at me like, oh, I know why he got the job. And I just and so it just creates this weird, awkward social dynamic that I don't think is very healthy for anyone in the long run. I don't know your thoughts about that, but
no, and we're actually, in my personal opinion, based on the large amount of people that I work with on a day-to-day basis, we're very diverse, and we have a lot of backgrounds, and we have people with degrees or no degree and tons of experience. Like, we're very diverse. But when you get up into our leadership, we start lacking diversity there, and a lot, and not so much around race diversity, but a lot around gender diversity. In different sections, right? Finance is one way, and HR is one way, and so I think that they've expressed that, but it's kind of just interesting to me because the company that I work with particularly isn't afraid to get rid of people when they don't perform. So if they're hiring you for some random reason, like, and you're not qualified, and they're just hiring you because of your race or your gender or whatever, because they need more XYZ to fill the quota. You're not going to be able to perform at the level. And I would be really, I haven't experienced anyone who's there that can't perform, that's staying for some unknown reason. So in my sense, if you're working for a decent company that's going to get good talent and hold on to good talent, then if you're hired for a check the box reason, you're not going to be able to stay for very long. Like you're not going to be able to hold your own weight. So.
And you think even after the critical race training, they would fire them?
Yeah, I don't know. I would assume that they have in the past, simply because there's nobody there that's just skating by that doesn't know their stuff, it seems. So it seems like everybody that is there, they met the qualifications somehow, or they're capable of doing their job, which is really all that matters. But if you're a company that's only doing stuff to check the box, you're going to feel it one way or the other. Like you're going to start having, not the greatest turnout in productivity and things, because you're hiring people that not based off their merit, you're hiring them for some other reason.
Right. You'll ultimately fail because it wasn't based off of, what your qualifications are whatsoever. It's just based on what you look like. You said something earlier about not just the boldness of the people from the left and how they will show up to a work meeting with a Trump t-shirt on. Why do you feel like personally that conservatives don't feel like they have that freedom?
Because they don't, because they'll get fired.
I know, but like why? Why?
I don't know why. Because it's socially, because they've already put conservatives in the, we talk a lot about like critical race theory puts people in the boxes of like oppressor and oppressed, right?
Yes.
And the left has adopted, or they seem to have adopted, right? We stand for all of the oppressed groups, all of the underdog, unheard groups, right? The LGBTQ, the Black, minority populations, whatever you want, you can go forever enlisting all of them, but supposedly they do. We all know that the policies that they put in place, if you look at them imperialistically and statistically, they don't do that 99% of the time.
Right.
And so I think that if you see anybody that stands for the left, they're just the Democrat Party, let's say, and they may be still a perception that they're the liberals that are fighting for all these civil rights and everything like that, but that's no longer really what the case is, then it's hard to come and be like, oh, I'm the group that's against that, because they've made it to where, like, all these bills too that the Democrats passed, they're all worded all pretty and stuff, and it's hard to say I'm against the American First Act. It's like it's 100%. Hard to do that, because they frame it in a way that's, if you're against that thing, you sound horrible. You sound like this horrible person. So I think that that's a lot of the perspective, and I think the goal for everybody who's in the middle left, middle right, is to understand that the way that things are going is not the way that either one of us want it to go. So until we get back to a place where, and I don't know, we were in this place a long time ago, like before I was born a long time ago, but until we get back to a place where we're actually debating the 5% of issues that we actually differ on, we need to kind of join together and not let this that we don't agree with kind of take over everything. And I think we're starting to do that. I really do think we're starting to do that.
I like that. There's a little hope, because I feel like sometimes in our culture today, people are more inclined to just prove their point to be right than actually learning from each other. Like, even if I watch predominantly conservative, even to liberal podcasts, it's like people come on their podcast and they just want to have a debate. Like, I just want to get to know people and know your thoughts and opinions and why you think that way. That's kind of my passion of life anyways. But what, do you feel like that's a part in culture, or do you feel like that's diminishing? Because I feel like people are just like, I know what I already believe, and I'm here to tell you why you should believe what I believe.
I don't know, because I would say, like, if you look at media and everything, that's going to tell you that people are pulling apart.
Right.
But what I found is, I have my friends that are liberal leaning that I talk to all the time, and they make really great points. And to your point, that's why I love to talk to them, is because if you can argue my point of view and it's something that I am struggling to find an argument back for, then that gets my wheels turning in my head. And there's been several instances over the last 5 years that things, like I said, have changed my mind. So if you're capable of providing a good argument to me, then that's going to be hard for me to debate about. But when I look at, I started posting stuff, before the election, during the election, on my Instagram, where I have a lot of different friends. And I found a lot of people that I know to be, more liberal than I am, and definitely did not vote for Trump, agreeing with what I said. And several people, even recently, since the craziness has happened, and I've been posting a lot about critical race theory, bills that are being passed and proposed, and at the same time that Biden saying he's not going to pay off your student loans, which is what everybody my generation really wanted. At the same time, they're trying to pass a bill where they fund campaigns. It's like federally funded campaigns. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? And so the more I started posting about that, people that I did not expect to reach out to me reached out to me and said, I mean, you're right. It is getting crazy and out of control. And like, I don't like it. And so I think on the surface, like what we're seeing is one way, but I think, when you look at what's happening in your personal experiences, and also things like the Hispanic vote is going up, the Black vote is going up for conservatives. McAllen, Texas just won their, mayorship, their Republican mayorship. Stuff like that is happening, that if the center left people and the true liberals and the libertarians, if they were not starting to vote for our candidates that we're putting forward that have this grassroots conservative mentality, if they were not voting for them, those things wouldn't be happening. So it has to be happening. It has to be. Statistically, it has to be. So I think that there's one perspective, and you got to think, I mean, media, they're downvoting comments, they're restricting people's voices, they're not letting people post on all platforms. So when you go and you look at it, exactly, you're in jail, right? So if you go and you look at it, you're only seeing what they want you to see, one way. And I think a lot of people, 85% of the US population, is very close aligned and in the middle, a little left, a little right, but agree on most things. And probably even the center left leaning people are still fiscally conservative, and they don't want money wasted for no reason, and things like that. So I really do think a lot of people align on and agree on things a lot more than you think that they do.
Yeah. Do you think that just comes down to education and conversation, or changing your media source?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And hearing other people's arguments, like you said, I mean, they can easily change your mind or have you second guessing your opinion, or even doing your own research of like why your argument failed in that debate, right? Why it didn't stand up as well as theirs did, and either educating yourself on your own stance or changing it. And the same works for them. Like if you have somebody that's talking to you about things and watching what you post and reading and seeing your perspective, that's the first step in any kind of agreement, right? Is understanding the other person's perspective, where they're coming from, why they think the way that they think. So as long as people are willing to do that, I think that we're going to find some kind of common ground, at least common ground for a while, to get us back to like normalcy or some sort of, I don't know. We need like a ticket where it's like Ron DeSantis versus Tulsi Gabbard. Like that's where the United States should.
I wish.
Like that's the ticket that we should be grappling over. We shouldn't have like, Liz Cheney versus Joe Biden. Like, oh my God, something like that. That's not reflective of people at all. So
just shows you the power of the establishment. That's really encouraging to hear you say that, because maybe it's just because I'm too much in academic spheres and I worked in education for too long. I just don't see that. I don't see a willingness to have a conversation in those fields, and a willingness to engage in diversity of thought, and willingness to like be open to allowing it. It's almost like one is seen as hate speech and the other one is seen as like very progressive and loving. And I have been afraid to open my mouth at times, but I usually find different ways to speak in the academic realm, where I ask the questions of why, and why do you believe that? And I ultimately try to bring them down to the fact that maybe what they believe doesn't really hold as much merit as they thought, or maybe they didn't know essentially of what happened by just asking them questions rather than here's what I believe. So that's really encouraging to hear you say that, though. I like that.
I think that's a key. And if you're ever talking to somebody and you start voicing your opinions and they get defensive, that's really how you have to approach them. When they say what they believe, just asking why, and not being like, well, why? Because then they're going to get defensive, right? But being like, why do you think that? That's interesting. And most times people believe something and they don't really know why, right? Or they can't pinpoint why. I love the shows that I watch, or the podcasts and YouTube shows that I watch on Instagram and stuff, where people go and they ask people a question about Trump and they're like, oh, I hate him because of this. And they're like, oh yeah, what did he say that you didn't like? And they don't have anything. Right. And maybe that's just me, as far as like, if I'm gonna be so bold as to like say my opinion out loud, I'm gonna have a reason why, at least.
Yeah,
and
same.
Like an example or something,
Yeah, I think that shows the difference of like what Rush Limbaugh always talked about. I remember as a kid being a Rush baby growing up, and I hated him as a kid, but then I learned to love him. But he like would talk about the low information voters, and I never knew what that meant until now as an adult. I'm like, I have all my liberal friends are all low information voters. They don't read the news. They like read the news. They just look at headlines, and then they watch, Brian Stelter or Cuomo. They are Rachel Maddow. They love those shows. I mean, they're not a lot of them are tuning into those shows, but they love them because and that's all the news they get. And so it makes sense why they believe I've been trying to like change the way of my story. My podcast is more of a critiquing the left, where it's like, I want to know why liberals are still so focused on January 6th. It's because the media is just talking about it nonstop on that side. Where if you go to the conservative side, they're not even talking about it because it's dumb. So I don't know.
Yeah. And it wasn't like, I guess from the conservative side, like, no, it shouldn't have happened. But when you weigh the fact that no one died except a protester who got shot in the back. Granted, I mean, at the time that the senators and congressmen that were locked in the chamber, they did not know what was going on outside the chamber. So I totally understand the fact that somebody's crawling through the door and you don't know. And we know that nobody on premise was accused of having a weapon, like any kind of, there was like bear spray and he didn't use, but it was proven that he didn't use it, stuff like that, but nobody had like a gun or anything. And so I don't know if you have to bleep that, or, a pew pew. I don't know if you have to bleep. I
don't care anymore. I really don't care.
And if people weren't trying to bust into the Portland or the Oregon State, the state, Capitol, if people weren't trying to bust into that and police buildings and stuff for the last year and a half, and we weren't already super desensitized to this idea that people are just gonna, burn state buildings to the ground, but then you want us to freak out about this. Like, we can't have it both ways, guys. We have to compromise. So either it's a really egregious and horrible thing, or we're not going to act like it's a big deal. But we got to agree and we got to be on the same page. I remember my mom telling me, before the 70s, before the LA riots, burning a cop car was like, did not happen, right? Like it did not happen. And then the first time that it did in the LA riots, and it was like televised, people were like, oh my gosh, like this is horrible, right? And now it happens all the freaking time.
Right.
All the time. And so if you move that window of what's acceptable, and you've been doing it to us for the last 2 years or so, right? And then something happens, and then you want to pretend like it's this horrible thing. You cannot have it both ways. And if you're going to tell me January 6th was horrible and egregious and like, the worst thing ever, then you better say the same thing about everything else that's been happening. And I would expect you to hold me to the same accountability. Okay.
Yeah.
But we gotta get on some kind of even playing field here and establish the truths and the facts, and then we can address and assess things appropriately on the same understanding. But if we can't even do that, then there's no point, because it's just objective. Like, it's your objective truth, my objective truth. They're never going to match. We're never going to agree, because we literally are living in two different worlds. So
yeah, the left doesn't care about the double standard. They know they live in the double standard. They know it. And I think conservatives, we see it as a fallacy, and we're like, hey, what about, well, you guys did that. They don't care. And like, even in the media, they are like, yeah, I know we messed up the story, but whatever. We'll just keep talking and we'll just keep going. And so I don't
never mentioned that we were wrong. And then, even though maybe like we posted like a sly, like, oops, no, it didn't reach anybody. So everybody's perspective is still that it's one way. Yeah.
Right.
And I think too, I have a different perspective because I'm down here in Texas. So even the liberals here, I think, are a little bit further to the right than probably. I lived in Washington State for a while, and they're pretty nuts. It's pretty crazy up there.
Seattle side or Spokane side? I think there's like a
Seattle side.
Okay, I lived in Spokane for a little while, so Seattle, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, it was 2 years, and I called my ass back. So.
Just like one step away from Portland.
I miss the sun, man. Like, I know it's really like it's 100 degrees today. Like, literally. But the dark is bad. Like, it's not cool.
No, it rains there. No, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. That's so funny. Yeah, I just double say. What do you think about the whole like new DOJ pushing about telling on your neighbor, like the red flag laws, but for conservatives and evil Trump supporters?
It's funny. I posted some stuff a while back, and I'd have to look at it. I think it was the Holocaust. It's from the Holocaust museum.org. I'll find it so you can post it in the comments or something. But it walks through because it's really hard sometimes, I think, for people to understand the difference between fascism and communism. Okay, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. They're two extremes. Okay, and a lot of people see capitalism and they are trying to associate it, especially in the news, with fascism, and that is false. So what happens in fascism is the government gets so big that they put all of their buddies, like Mark Zuckerberg, let's say, in charge of all of the big companies. And they are pro-monopoly, squash everybody, all the small businesses. They do not control monopolies at all. So what we're seeing with like big tech doing the government's bidding. So whereas communism, the government actually owns the company. Okay, the company is controlled, the land is controlled, it's owned by the government. Like federal land is in the United States. Okay,
think of it China.
Yeah, exactly. So fascism, they're pro the Chamber of Commerce or whatever you want to equate it to in the US, but they do not allow for competition, which is not what capitalism is. That is the opposite of what capitalism is.
Right.
So it's really interesting because that website really talks about things like that. That was one of them. And then the second one was, how were they able to literally control everybody? Because there was 1 or 2 soldiers for every 10,000 people. So they were not, and they didn't, this was back, they didn't have like surveillance, and cameras everywhere. Nobody had a phone, nobody, they weren't watching, there was no social media. So how did they control like what you did? And how they did that was based with informants. So they would blackmail people, they would, threaten them, whatever. to spy on their neighbor. And the only reason that they knew what was going on, that people were hiding Jews or anything like that, was because their neighbor reported it. That is the only possible physical way that they had control over people, and it worked. And so if you let people do that, if you're a part of that, then you're feeding the monster that is going to come after you, like it did. It did that then, it's done that before you. So I think it's really interesting. I get on Quora a lot, and like look at people's questions and comments, and some of them are crazy, and a lot of people don't know the difference between communism and fascism and what the actual state of each were. And they want to associate one or the other with one of the other parties in the US without knowing what, I think, and the problem too, they don't know what that party stands for. They don't know what the party even wants. And sure, if you're comparing like the Republicans of like Liz Cheney era, you can associate them with that all you want, because we don't like them anymore. I guess, you know what I mean? Like we're getting them out, hopefully. Yeah. We're in the process of doing that. But that was a key thing in the rise of Nazi Germany. So if you're looking at it and you want to draw parallels and you want to play that game, it's very closely related. And the problem too is the definitions of like hate speech and things like that being so vague that if they wanted to come after you, they could. And that's the scary part, is if you start getting a large following on some kind of social media and you start saying stuff that matters or that's true, and they want to get rid of you, they have all of these loopholes that they could put you into any of them and make it stick. And it's crazy because here we have like, gun-toting, friends that are liberals that are like, think Donald Trump's speech on January 6th was insurrection, right? Or like you have people that are like voting for Biden and also like, oh my gosh, I'm going to tell them that I threw my guns off my boat and I lost them. And it's like, you're not voting with things that you seem to day to day like align with. So that's weird that you don't know that and that you're not doing that. So
yeah, 100%. No, I feel like you said something wise. I think a lot of people don't understand what capitalism is, and I have a lot of liberal friends that believe our system is capitalistic, and it's like one of the most eye-opening talks I have with people about how not capitalistic our, how we run our economy. Yeah, at all. And people think, there's like, look at this capitalism. And you're like, that is not capitalism. That's the opposite. They're like, these big tech companies just like silencing people. What? I thought you were capitalist. I thought you were just like allowing companies to do whatever they want.
That's not what that is. You're not capitalist if somebody, and you look at Parler. So, you're not allowed to do all that. You have to meet Twitter says you have to meet our guidelines. Okay, the guidelines get too crazy. So you're not meeting, so Twitter's no longer meeting the demand of a large portion of their base, right? Yeah. So some other company comes in, they say, we're going to fill that niche and we're going to create our own. And this is going to be our platform. This is how we're going to run it. And naturally, just like we do with just like we saw with like Texas and California, if people like this option better, they're going to leave. They're going to go and they're going to go to this other option. And that's how it's supposed to work. But what happens is, okay, well, all of the app stores, so if you want it, it's an app. So if you want it on your phone at all, you have to do what Google or Android or Apple tell you to do.
Yes.
And if they're in cahoots, then you can't sell it on a phone. Right. And then you have to, even if you just want to be web-based, you either have to have your own servers, which people are sitting here wondering, like, how do people get hacked? It's like, because they run their own shit, and then they don't pay anybody anything to maintain it. So if you're a startup, it's going to be really hard. Yeah. So you go to a cloud provider, and a cloud provider, what they're able to do is if your business jumps overnight, if you have your own bare metal servers in your house and you're running everything like on your own, and you go from 10,000 people on your platform to 500,000 people on your platform in 3 days, you can't physically get enough space in time. So you have to have it on a cloud provider, because they're the only one that can scale that fast to allow you to grow if you're anticipating that kind of growth, because you're really going to provide like something great, right? There's only like 4 main cloud providers. There's AWS, there's IBM, there's I think Microsoft, and there's one more. I can't think of it right now. But anyways, and it's the same people that own Google, that own Twitter, that it's the same like 10 people. If those 10 CEOs get together and decide to do something, which they do, because they're like part of the Davos group or whatever, then you're squashed. You can't, and that's just tech. We're just talking tech. That's true for oil and gas. That's true for real estate. That's true for so many different things. So all the big industries, right? If you want to go and start a company and create leggings and sell it on Instagram, you can probably do great, right? But if we're talking about the media, the land, the energy, all of those big industries, they're controlled in that way, and they're controlled in that way on purpose. And if we don't get really strict about breaking up monopolies and ensuring that we don't have a barrier to entry that's like that, especially a barrier to entry that's political, like that's the biggest problem. We should have a political barrier to entry. Then we're not going to really get anywhere. And I think that's what Charlie Kirk says a lot. He talks about we got to start owning stuff. Like they own Hollywood, they own schools, they own, that they're in everything, and we don't own anything. And we just let them accumulate all of that. Every single news station, every single paper, every single magazine, major school, all of it. And if we don't start launching our own stuff, we're not going to be able to have a voice anymore.
Like the Daily Wire doing their own movies. What do you think? So I heard, do you think the answer is to break these companies up, or what do you feel like the answer is for big tech?
I don't know. I don't think that if you just broke Twitter up, that wouldn't work. It's not like Southwestern Bell, right? Like way back when they broke them up. But I don't think that Twitter's CEO or anybody in their C-suite or on their board should be able to be on the board or part of a C-suite or an investor in any other company in that sphere unless they quit. So you can't be the CEO of Twitter and on the board of Google and a major investor in AWS. Like, you know what I mean? Like that, you shouldn't be able to do that and have influence in so many different places. And I don't think that's unrealistic to ask, because if you do have that much money and that much power, then you're going to have to submit to some further regulation. And that's not affecting any parlor owner that gets large one day or whatever and can't invest in, I don't know, something else. You would have to get really big to do that. But I do think that something needs to be done, and something needs to be done too about lobbyists. I don't think that major tech companies like that should be part of lobby groups. I don't think that prior Congress people should be part of lobby groups. I don't think major lobby groups or leaders should then be able to run for Congress. Like there's too much like overlap in all of that that's causing major problems. That if with some simple policy changes like that, you can cut down a lot of the like colluding with each other.
You mean fortifying?
Yeah.
That's the word they like to use. I don't know. I think it's the liberal side of me that I think they should be regulated as in the public sector, because I just see them. Look, we break them up. We make different people in power. They're just going to keep doing the same thing. I just feel like they'll put their friends in. You can break up Facebook. You can have the video portion of Facebook, and then they'll just do the same thing. They're not going to change. I think there's like this. I see like a lot of conservative.
They have too much money. They'll just do it somewhere else.
Yes, and way too much power. They'll just be like, let's make sure we continue. Yeah, we'll appease the conservatives, make them feel good on the inside about breaking us up, and maybe they feel like they'll have hope on this platform now. But I think they're just too big now. They're too big, they're too powerful, they're too manipulative to our election
definitely
system.
reverse 230.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, 230. I can't believe the Republicans did absolutely nothing. That still to this day just pisses me off. And that's literally why I became politically homeless, because I don't even associate with the Republicans anymore. If they're not American first Republican, I don't even want to hear their thoughts. Like, I just feel like they're so I'm from South Carolina, and I lived there most of my life. I hate it. I'm blanking. What's his name? Lindsey Graham. I hated Lindsey Graham. Cannot stand him. But at the time, I would always like talk to my parents and like talk to conservatives around there. Like, well, who else are we gonna vote for? I'm like, I don't care. I'll let a Democrat win just so we get him out. Like, I don't care. I just at this point, he just shows up when he feels like it. He's just like a Mitch McConnell. He just like comes out of the closet.
They're way too freaking long. They've been there way too long.
What are your thoughts on term limits?
Oh, I'm for it.
I knew we could have a conversation.
Yeah, totally. There's no reason that should be your job for the rest of your life. You can go and you can advise people, but let's go back to like the super basics of being a leader. A good leader is not afraid to train and promote other good leaders to become leaders. And if you've been a good leader for a decent, and I'm on the same boat that like, I don't want to see Ted Cruz leave or Greg Abbott leave, but it's time. And what's happening is there's people like my generation, like Hawthorne, that are coming in that deserve a shot. We're getting people that have not gone to school the same time we've gone to school. They haven't seen the things that we've seen. They're not entering the workforce, at this time. And in some cases, they haven't been in the workforce ever. Or like in 30, 40 years. So it's like
Joe Biden.
Yeah. So, no, I'm totally for term limits. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they always throw out that idea that they're servants, public servants, which is total bullshit. If it's like a lifetime career and you become millionaires walking in to nothing that's not a servant. That's a career. And they treat it as such. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, how old is that lady? How is she still there?
She was in there before I was born.
100%. Yeah, same. Same with Joe Biden. I mean, I just
well, honestly, and if you're a public servant, then there's no way that you should be able to turn that into a paying job for 40 years. If you're serving, you literally should be able to only serve for 4 years, because it deducts, like you're giving up something, right?
Yes.
But obviously you're not. You didn't have a job, and then you're like, I'm gonna go be a public servant, and I'm gonna scrape by for 2 years and make it work and travel a lot and be away from my family. And you do that for 2 or 4 years, and then you're done. And then you're like, okay, cool, back to normal life. Because it's not, if it doesn't feel that way, then it's not that way. So stop calling it that.
Seriously. No, I totally agree. What are your thoughts? Okay, so I've been thinking about this whole media push about saying America is back. And Joe Biden's doing a great job at the G7. Like, what are your thoughts when you hear America is back?
I think all of it, like to your point, all the people that have been in Congress for forever, and all of the lobbies that have existed forever, and Joe Biden himself that has existed forever, in the political sphere, have a perception of what it used to be. And they're like, oh, it's back to the way it used to be. And the way that it used to be was really shitty for all of us, Americans. Basically, you cared more about, big milk, because big milk was a thing when we were younger. Big milk and, oil and gas and everything, more than you cared about, the American people. We haven't done stuff. We've done more. We've been the world's ATM for so long. And what really frustrates me too And I heard this point, can't remember where I heard it on, but it really resonated with me. So I'm of that generation where, you know, we went to, and I'm sure you are too, but we went to school, we got student loans, our parents got parent loans and these and things like that. And
Yep.
and they framed it in a way that like our parents were told that if they worked and they put into Social Security and they got us this student loan, that our lives would be better and that we would be able to find jobs, and we would be able to find jobs that were better than their jobs. And then this could just keep going, right? And we would have a
Yeah.
better outlook. And then there was that promise there, right? That even if you have to get a loan to go to school, and this is happening in high school, right, where they're pushing everybody to go to college, there was this promise there. Well, what happened is then our generation, we graduated, we got out, and there's an influx of immigration, there's an influx of H-1B visas, right? So and so it doesn't matter what degree you have, everybody who is getting out of school, there's not this amazing, in most states, and even in Texas it's kind of hard getting out, there's not this amazing employment, these amazing employment opportunities. You're getting in base level, the student loans you're paying off are, you know, taking up a large portion of your income, to where you're having to live at home or with roommates or whatever for quite a while until you can build up at your job and get paid more. And it's even happening in these degrees, like I said, H-1B visas, it's even happening in these degrees where in like tech, where we're told, oh, it's in demand, it's in demand, it's in demand.
Right.
And the policy like around H-1B visas and things, where if you need this engineer that does this special thing, is super knowledgeable in their area, and you just cannot find it, you can go outside of the country and find it and pay them to come here and bring it here. But they're not doing that. They're going and finding people that are willing to work $30,000 or $40,000 a year, and then they're bringing them here, and they're undercutting all of the kids they made that promise to their parents, and they're not keeping their promise to the American people, and they're putting the benefit of other people in other countries, you know, above that. And that's kind of like I forget what it's called, something of the means, where you have to meet your base needs first before you can do your other needs, right? Like you have to have food and water and shelter before you can have other. So you have to take
Haslow
care
or
of
something. I don't
huh?
remember. Is it called Haslow's hierarchical
Maybe.
needs or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So if you're not taking care of your own people comes first. It doesn't mean that it always, you never take care of anybody else, that this has to be at 100%, right? You don't need to be gluttonous before you can, you know, have a car, you know, but you have to be meeting your base needs, and we're not. And you can hear it from the American people that we're not doing that right now. There's a bunch of people that are bogged down under student loans with higher interest rates than mortgage rates right now, and car loans right now, back to the government, and they can't find a job. And if they do find a job, they're doing an entry level position against people that are overseas or wherever, because we're not incentivizing companies to be here, stay here, employ people here. That's going back on that original promise, to me, in my opinion.
We're taxing the shit out of those people. Yeah, I drove Lyft for a while, so I've been in school and I didn't take out loans. I've been under the Dave Ramsey method has been enforced in me as a child. My mom is a huge Dave. Say what you want about Dave. People hate him, love him, whatever. But I was told I had to have a job if I'm going to school, and I have to pay for it. So I have no student debt. Even now, I'm finishing up my master's degree, and I'm working while I go to school, and it sucks. I'm not having the college experience. I'm not partying and stuff, but I am working. So, but I was working Lyft and driving for Uber, and I would say about 90% of the people I picked up around the tech center were people that were from India that would come in and do like little work visas, and they would take. And you're right, they were taking jobs away from American people, and they would work for a while, and then they would go back home. And these companies would just see this as this transactional thing, and they never hired American people. So you would graduate with a master's in business, and they're like, "Hey, you can work customer service for a while." You're like, "I went to school for that." Yeah, the college they sold you is not what it is at all.
No. And a lot of and a lot of times you can get great. My husband does not have a degree for the tech position that he has, and he's very in a niche of a position, and knows a specific set of skills that like is highly needed, and he works for a really big tech company, and they are slowly but surely sending everything over to India.
Wow.
Over the last 5 or 6 years, just slowly, leadership is going over there, and then they're hiring people under them over there, and it's just slowly changing. To the quality of work is changing. The U.S. is the number one leader in output of engineers and coders and everything like that. So we should be the ones in with the people in these higher difficult positions.
Right.
And they're overlooking that because of pay.
Wow.
And even in Europe, they have leadership and things like that in Europe, and you'd be surprised at how much little people in the tech industry get paid in France and Amsterdam and UK than they do here. So there's great opportunity here if you can get it, but if big companies are not incentivized to hire people here, they're not going to. And that promise that was made to you, that if you went to school and you did what you needed to do, and you got out, that you would be okay, and you would find something, and you would have a very successful career that you could live very easily off of, and be better than your parents, right? And continue and to provide for your children so they can be better than you, and so forth and so forth. It's not going to be there if we don't get stricter on these policies, because we're having way too much of that coming in and leaving at the same time. People coming in, and also companies sending jobs out.
It's really hard, because it's like the conservative side of me is like, well, it's just companies, looking at profit margins.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if we hire in India, it's cheaper. Why would we not do that? We'd be idiots not to do that. So I don't know.
I don't blame them for it. Like, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I blame the people that wrote the policies, that are letting the policies make it more financially, making it smarter financially to do that versus be here.
Right. It's almost like there should be sanctions for companies that hire overseas, and they should be charged more. So in a sense, it makes it worse for them in the long run. It's very populist.
Well, a bunch of companies are opening up their own part of their company in Ireland, because Ireland has 12% corporate tax. It's like one of the lowest. Oh. And so when they changed that, I think they changed it, I wouldn't quote me, they lowered it or did something about 2 years ago. And when they did, all of these companies started opening up in Ireland, all of them. Tons of corporations started opening. Now, they didn't move. If you want to look at Amazon North America, that's still here, but they opened an Amazon Ireland, right? And so now they're racking in their profit. All of their profit is going under Amazon Ireland, and not Amazon the US. So Amazon US doesn't pay any taxes, because Amazon US really didn't make a profit this year, but Amazon Ireland did. But they're all Amazon. It doesn't matter. They're all paying their CEO.
Right.
It's all it's all going to the same place.
Jeff's doing
so they
just
can
fine.
lower taxes or whatever.
That's really interesting. I know, and that's what the whole G7 was like. The new corporate tax that they're all going to sign on. What was it, 15% or something like that to raise? The new global tax thing.
So people can't. But again, that's another way of undercutting capitalism, right? If Ireland lowers their corporate tax to 12%. Yes. And they get all business, and therefore at the end of the day make way more tax money than you do, because 25 people at a 12% tax rate is way better than 5% people at a 20% tax rate, or 5 corporations, then good on them. It's obviously a policy that works. So I don't know why we don't adopt it, but
could you imagine thinking through these problems. Haley, thank you so much for joining me. I don't want to be conscious of your time. I feel like you should come on the show again because I think it's been really fun having somebody who's smart. Thank you guys so much for joining to the Derek O'Shea Show. Have a great day.